Hello everyone, today we are going to continue our CS50 cybersecurity course, okay? We are going to do week 2 cybersecurity securing systems. You guys can watch the lecture. You're going to learn a lot of those concepts that we are seeing in here, which are based on this lecture, but we are going to solve the questions from the assignment itself. Always remember that we don't encourage any kind of plagiarism, right? We encourage you to do the questions by yourself. This video solution is just for you guys that have a doubt or is not understanding any of the concepts you see in this assignment. Again, we always encourage you guys to do your own resolution, okay? This way you can fix those concepts in your mind much better. So let's jump right into the assignment. Okay guys, just like I told you guys in the other assignments, we have some different way to solve the problem sets in here in CS50 cybersecurity. We don't solve practical problems in VS Code. For example, we have a Google form to answer questions about the lecture itself. We are going to solve not in the form directly, but we are going to solve in this Google Docs in here. So let's create in here our first question. Okay, let me change here the alignment, and then let's see. So we have SETI Home. SETI Home was a distributed research computing project that largely ran until 2020, okay? Distributed computer is a network-driven tactic to leverage the processing power of many computers at once to, in this case, analyze radio signals captured from deep space in the hopes that those signals might reveal information about the presence of extraterrestrial life in the universe, okay? We can see here the wallpaper that this website used to have. So actually distributed computing is actually when we have multiple computers working together to accomplish something, okay? In this case was to capture from deep space a hope to find a signal of life outside of our planet, okay? In this case, multiple computers were working together to achieve this goal, okay? What type of threat is perhaps most uniquely given the nature of it, a risk in a research project like SETI Home, and how might the threat materialize? Just like I told you guys, when you have a project that is a distributed research computing, you have this huge problem in which you have your natural computer, your basic computer from the everyday life, working with a lot of other computers to accomplish this objective, okay? And since when you access this website, you are actually accessing data and actually downloading data in your private computer, but you are actually using your computer with a lot of other computers. This can be people with a good interest, or can be malicious people that is interested to invade your privacy and get access to your data. So a good answer for our problem in this case could be the unique threats goes around data breaches and privacy, okay? Since participants download and process data on their personal computers because the website processes using many computers at once, just like I told you guys. This data could have sensitive information related to the project, and the same could be manipulated due to data breaches, unauthorized access, privacy violations, and sabotage, for example. These threats could result in unauthorized access to sensitive project data or even personal data from the users. Okay, in this case, we are dealing with this project that has already ended. But in this case, this project, you don't have like a very super important data that could be leaked for an attacker and like in the case of the attacker get hands on this data, it's going to have a huge problem. In this case, this website is just trying to find radio signal from outside of Earth. But you can imagine if you have a website with sensitive data from a company, for example, which works with this multiple computer functionality, and you have a data breach, it could cause a lot of trouble for the company, right? So you can imagine what kind of threat can materialize using this kind of website, okay? Distributed research computing or distributed computing itself, right? But that's it in general. Let's go to the next question. Now in the next question we have, what are zero-day attacks and why are they a threat? If you guys take a look in the lecture, by the end of the lecture you have something that David Malan explained to us about zero-day attack. It's actually like if you have a website or a product, a application, and then you release this application, and in the first day of this application or like very soon, a attacker actually tests and breaches into your project website, for example, and have your data or user data leaked. If you guys take a look here in the notes from the CS50 cybersecurity on week 2, we can see that here in the topic antivirus, we have some applications and some functionality for the antivirus, which is actually detecting viruses and hopefully can remove them. And you have in the last bullet point in here that still even having an antivirus, one may be vulnerable to zero-day attacks, which exploit now vulnerabilities in software before the system company has had a chance to create a fix. Properly saying, it's not in the first day of the launch of your application or website, but can be in a short period of time from the release of your project. It makes much more easier for the attacker to breach into your system because you don't have any defense or you haven't already tried and tested your project, so you won't have time to create a fix once this attacker have already breached into your system. So a good answer to this question could be zero-day attacks are a type of cyber attack that aims on unknown vulnerabilities. These vulnerabilities are called zero-day because they are used by attackers on the same day or very soon after the vulnerability is discovered, leaving the developers with almost no time to prepare and try to fix or avoid the attack, right? They are a huge threat because the attack is always a surprise and because that you don't have time to defend yourself and you have a high negative impact on your website since you can't take any defense very soon. So that's it for our answer. Of course, you can implement, add something else or remove something that you saw in this answer. Now in our next question we have what is port scanning and how is it a threat? Pretty simple question, but we have to understand what this is. Port scanning is actually, just like the name itself gives to us, we are going to scan a lot of ports from that network, from that server until we find a port that is actually connectable, right? And in this way you can have, of course, malicious people trying to connect into your server, and then they are going to do a penetration test to see where they can get an easy breach in your server, but of course you can use as well for testing, okay, for the company itself, for the owner of the application, test on where he can find weakness in the product, okay? Just like the last problem, you can take a look here in the topic ports in the notes from the week, okay, and we can see that accordingly adversaries may engage in port scanning where all potential ports are tried to see if they are accepting traffic. So you are connected to the website. This will depend, of course, on where you are connected, HTTP or HTTPS, okay, and then they can keep trying each port until they get access to your data and access to your connection, okay, to your server, right? And you have, of course, penetration tests, just like I told you guys, to test those kinds of possibilities. Usually they are used by companies to check easy breaches that attackers can have, but they can be used as well by attackers, okay? So a good answer for this question could be port scanning is a technique to discover open network ports. It sends a series of connection requests, which can be called penetration testing, to network ports of a system to determine which ports are open and active for connections. While it has legitimate uses for network administration, it can be a threat when malicious people use it to gather information about potential vulnerabilities of people, right, or companies, plan attacks and evade detection, making their way into the system much easier after planning the attack. So you guys can see that with penetration testing, if someone have a bad intention, they can try and actually plan before the attack what they are going to do, what strategy they are going to take. And once you realize it can be already over, the attacker could have hands on your information already. That's why it's a good concept to keep in mind. Let's go to the next question. Okay everyone, now to our next question we have what are super cookies? Via what means do we most commonly obtain, receive them, and how do they create threats to our systems? I think this is like the largest question in this assignment. You have the potential to be the largest question, right? So I think you guys are familiar with cookies, okay? Cookies is something that we receive in our web browser. I think you guys are familiar with getting inside of a website and then they ask us permission to accept our cookies or reject all cookies, right? Basically, cookies are responsible to keep our identification stored in our browser, right? So if we log in into Gmail, for example, after 1 month, when you get back and try to log in again, your information will be saved, or you are going to be logged in directly without having to type all of your information again and again. And this is actually kept inside of those cookies, okay? They are responsible for keeping this data, tracking your movimentation and data within websites and in your network. And this can be very dangerous. At the same way that we have those cookies, they are like pretty small information here and there. We have super cookies, which is a bunch of different information, larger information that usually are stored in your local storage from the computer because they are much larger and usually they hold a lot of information. They are harder to to delete from your web browser, for example, and they can become a huge threat when someone malicious get hands on them. Okay, if you guys take a look here as well in the notes from CS50, we can see here in HTTP that we have a bullet point in here for cookies and a little note in here for super cookies. Okay, we have to keep in mind as well. You guys can take a look in the lecture, but if you guys take a look at the difference from HTTP method and HTTPS method, HTTPS it's actually a much more secure method for accessing websites, because all of the information that we are receiving and we are sending is encrypted. As you can see in here, traffic between parties is encrypted, right? So it's not going to be very easy for an attacker to figure out what is the real data that is in traffic there, because it's encrypted. HTTP is not encrypted. That's why we have to keep in mind that a HTTP connection is not as safe as HTTPS. That's why they are saying here, cookies are small files that websites put on your computer. Cookies may be used by websites to keep track of who you are, present your emails, or keep track of your shopping cart, for example. Cookies make one vulnerable to session hijacking, whereby an adversary could inject a super cookie to track you. Okay, in this case, they could actually get access to your cookies, and then they can actually pass by the same person that you are using their computer, right? Because they are going to have the exact same cookie that you are using. So the computer will understand, oh, this is Leonardo, for example, but it's not. The attacker just had access to that information, that sensitive information. That's why we should keep in mind, and that's why super cookies can create a threat, and even more easily if you are not using the right protocol. Okay, so a good answer for this question could be: super cookies are a type of tracking used in web browsers to store the user data and browsing history. They are super cookies because they are particularly difficult to delete and can persist even after traditional cookies have already been deleted. Usually they store large amounts of data, and most of the time in the local storage of your browser. In those cases, you can have some trouble if someone with malicious intentions intercept your cookie session, meaning they can impersonate you and perform actions with your data and history on their own without your consent. Okay, so that's pretty difficult. It's always easier for an attacker to get his hands on your cookies if you are in an HTTP and not in an HTTPS server, because in this way your session will not be encrypted, giving full and direct access to the attacker. We just got to a conclusive answer, a long answer, but of course you guys can make it shorter, you guys can make it longer, you can explain a little bit more of those concepts, but as always it's a good concept to keep in mind, right, about cybersecurity. So with that said, let's go to the next problem. Going right into the next question, this is going to be an easy one, but it's a concept very interesting. I don't think a lot of people know about this other kind of threat. What makes a worm distinct from a virus? Okay, virus, I think you guys are familiar with this. Virus is something that can come with a file to your computer, and once this virus is in your computer, it can do almost anything, and usually they are bad things to your data in your computer, right? But what is the main difference from those two things, those two malwares, worm and a virus? If you guys take a look here in the notes as well, we have here in the concept of malware, we have the definition of both, right? A virus is a piece of software that attaches itself to your computer. Once installed, it can do nearly anything in your computer, just like I said, usually bad things, right? A worm is a malicious piece of software that can move from one computer to another via holes in security. So you guys can see that a worm can be much more of a threat to your computer, to your security. Okay, if you have a file, for example, you get a virus in your computer and you try to make a backup to keep some files that you can save, and then you reset your computer, format your computer, and then you put your file again in the computer, but the worm has already moved to your other system, for example. But in this case, what is the main difference from both? It's pretty simple. We can actually use these concepts and some other information to make this question. So we could actually answer this question saying that worms are distinct from viruses because they are independent, self-replicating malware that can propagate on their own, often using network vulnerabilities and communication channels without the need for host files like viruses. Okay, in this case, worms don't need a host file, for example. They can even propagate easily than a virus. This makes them harder to detect, while viruses are often more visible because they modify the files, right? Okay, I'm not going to say a lot of things about viruses, but this is a really good thing that they have as difference, okay? this ability to move to systems, okay? A worm don't want to be attached to that file to work, okay, or to do his malicious thing. As always, you can make it a little bit better, a little bit shorter. It's up to you guys, right? Let's go to the next question. Now in the next question, we have provide a technological example of security through obscurity. This concept is a lot more from the last assignment from week 1, in which we discuss a little bit about different kinds, different products of a encryption, which is ciphers and hashes, in which we have a password, for example, pineapple, after the encryption receive a huge number mixed between letters and numbers and symbols, which is a hash, for example. And this is an example of securing something through obscurity, because if we don't do this process of encrypting a data, the data that we are sending that is in traffic when we are navigating in the internet, it's not safe if someone breaches through our security, right? Because the person will have direct access to the data itself, so the attacker could have access directly to the password pineapple and not that huge hash number that he will need to figure out what is that password, which is almost impossible, okay? There are some other ways, of course, but when we secure something through obscurity, we are doing this, and we can do this with servers, for example, with passwords, usernames, and actually almost all the websites from nowadays, if they are well designed, they are going to have this process of securing things through obscurity. Okay, so a good answer for this question could be security through obscurity in technology could be a practice of using hidden port numbers for service or applications, and for example using encryption for passwords and usernames, so no one can have direct access to the original data. In those cases, we could use hashes as encryption, for example, or even ciphers that we saw as well. So this is a pretty good example of hiding the data that is going to be in the traffic. Okay, so if the traffic is interrupted by an attacker, for example, he will not see any data that makes sense or that he can use directly with a bad intention. But let's go to the next question. Now for our next question, we have distinguished the concepts of SSH and VPN. The VPN, it's something that we are more familiar, right? I think you guys, if you want to download, for example, a movie in the internet through illegal ways, I think you guys have already heard about VPNs. So in this case, if we take a look here in the lecture that we can explain a little bit better, we have a topic for VPN and for SSH. Let's click in here and we can see that VPN, virtual private network, establishes an encrypted channel between 2 points. Within a VPN, all traffic is encrypted. This is pretty good. However, there are some side effects, okay? And we can see here in the last bullet point, indeed, people often use a VPN to masquerade as being in another country, okay? Since we have a channel between 2 points, 2 computers, 2 servers, we can actually masquerade in which computer we are. So we can actually masquerade that we are in the United States, or we are in Australia, or we are in Brazil, for example. And SSH is a secure protocol by which you can execute commands on a remote server. If one has the appropriate access rights, you can execute commands directly on a remote server, okay? So we have a data that you can use a command, an SSH code, for example, that you are going to access that data from that computer or server. You have a pretty good example from GitHub. You can actually take a folder from another person, a project from another person, a code from another person, and you can actually import in your VS Code using an SSH directory, okay, if you have your VS Code connected with GitHub, for example, right? So a good answer for getting these differences together could be SSH is a protocol for secure, encrypted connections between 2 specific devices, usually used for remote administration and secure file transfers, right? VPN is a technology that creates secure encrypted ports for connecting your device to a private network, providing a higher level of security and privacy. Those are like the biggest differences and in general, right? But you guys can always take a look as well in the notes, in which you have simplified what is the difference from an SSH and a VPN. So you can actually say, to make it easier, just like we read in there, you have a connection from 2 different computers or services, and in SSH you have as well this connection, but you can actually transfer files using this SSH code remotely, right? With that being said, let's go to the next question. Alright guys, we are almost finishing the assignment. Let's go to the next one. What purpose does the X509 standard serve, right? This is actually a security and digital certificate protocol in which makes our connection much more secure. If you guys take a look as well in the lecture, in here we have the topic HTTPS. Just like I told you guys, HTTPS is a protocol much more safer than HTTP because it's always all of the data that is in traffic is encrypted. Okay, if you guys take a look here in the fourth bullet point, we have a website has a public key that is signed by a third party called a certificate of type X509. These websites also have a private key. So we have a public key, which is the certificate, and the website has a private key, which for their saying unlocks this public key to authenticate and get access for who you are, and as a result for that you are much more secure for breaches or invasion of your data. So this is actually like a fingerprint for their saying, and you have a private key to unlock this fingerprint. And we can actually say that the X509 standard serves the purpose of defining a framework for public key infrastructure and digital certificate management. It specifies the format for public key certificates and the rules for their use in secure communications such as email, web browsing, and network authentication. So using the email, for example, you can have an email digitally signed by the sender, and once you receive this email you can actually verify without having 100% sure that is from the person that you expect, but you can verify this digital certification to actually make sure of this. That's how you can find out if that is legit, because this public key makes sure of this. But let's go to our next question. Now we have a pretty interesting question. We have already talked about this method in this video already. Why might a company's security team practice penetration testing, pen testing, right? We just talked about penetration testing here in the question of port scanning, which is a method to scan those ports to see where is the vulnerability, for example. So why might a company use this method in their work? Okay, it's pretty simple. I just told you guys in the question from ports, okay, in which the company is going to test with the penetration testing the ports and the possible breaches that some people with bad intentions can find. Okay, in this way they can test first using the pen testing and figuring out where is the weak point in their project, in their server. Therefore, they can actually patch and try to fix that before malicious people find those ways in the security system. Because if malicious people find this weakness with pen testing, they can actually plan their attack, and this will make the security team life a lot worse when the attack is actually done, right? So it's pretty simple why the company might actually practice penetration testing, right? In words, we could say that a company's security team conducts penetration testing to discover vulnerabilities, verify security controls, and try to avoid the damage malicious people can achieve easily if they don't test those vulnerabilities first. Pen testing can also increase security awareness, continuous security improvements, and protection of sensitive data and systems. And here we have question 9, and I'm certain you guys found this question a little bit more easier because we just talked about the same concept here in the question about port scanning, right? But that's it for this question. Let's go to our last question from our assignment. Now guys, to finish our assignment, we have of the below HTTP status codes, which most likely suggests that a distributed denial of service, DDoS attack may be occurring, right? So a DDoS attack, a distributed denial of service, is just like the name tells us, okay? It's a malicious attack in which you have a lot of different services pretending to be accessing that server, that website, and it creates like a fake traffic in that website with the intention of breaking, and almost 100% of the possibility of a real person to access that website. And then if the person don't have web access to that website, what error HTTP status code we should receive? Okay, so we have a lot of those codes in here. Okay, not found, too many requests, services unavailable. You can access actually this link in here, HTTP status codes, in which you can read all of the status codes and what they mean. Okay, you have here a period of numbers and values. You can take a look in here. Okay, but since we are getting a attack to our server because they are faking through bots a lot of different connections to my server, for example, to create this fake traffic, we can see here in server error responses, okay? And we can see that we have in here the 503 service unavailable. The server is not ready to handle the request. Why the server is not ready to handle my request? Because there are a lot of fake different IPs and servers flooding that server to create this huge traffic. That's why the server can't handle my real intention of accessing that website. Common causes are a server that is down for maintenance or that is overloaded. And that's how we could imagine that actually we have a probability of receiving this error if there is someone trying to make this attack into the website that I'm interested to access, okay? Because we have a distributed denial of service. So that's the right answer for this question. The status code 503 service unavailable. And that's how we finish our assignment. Okay guys, you guys can give your feedbacks in here as well and submit your form to CS50. But for this assignment, that's it. Okay guys, again, we don't encourage any kind of plagiarism. You guys should just read those solutions to make sure you guys understand the concepts, and then you can formulate your own solution, research, and make a better solution that you guys saw in here. If you guys like the video, please give a thumbs up. If you have any doubts, you can leave a comment in the video here in YouTube as well, okay? I hope to see you guys soon. Bye bye.